What's your opinion on manifesting and how can somebody do it the right way?
Manifesting is an incredibly important tool in your toolkit for a fulfilling and happy life. And most of us are doing it wrong. So, manifesting done properly is the process by which you train your mind, body, and spirit to help you get what you want. Manifesting is not based on the research, thinking about something and then it suddenly magically happens. And, since so many of your listeners are, people who are very, spiritual and faithful, I'm sure you've had an experience where you've prayed and prayed and prayed for something and it's not coming, it's not coming, it's not coming. You go through the worst experience or breakdown of your life. I bet jail and getting arrested was probably this for you. And then it's 10 years later that you look back and go, oh my God, my prayers were answered, just not in the manner in which I had been praying they would be answered. And so, what I want you to understand is that if you want to use manifesting, here's how you're going to do it. Don't think about the end. Don't think about the mansion you want to buy. Don't think about the soulmate that you're going to meet. Don't think about the finish line on the marathon because thinking about the end doesn't help your mind, body, and spirit prepare you to do the work to get it. There are no, get out of jail free cards in life. There just aren't. You're going to have to put in the work to get the real results that you want. And so what you do when you manifest properly is you're going to visualize the bridge or the path in between where you are today and where you want to go. So, why don't you pick something that you want, Doug? What's a goal of yours for this year?
Oh, let's see. A goal of mine for this year is I want to get my podcast to a point where it's helping tens of thousands of people.
Okay. So, you just said that I want to get my podcast to a point that it's helping tens of thousands of people. Now that you have identified what your goal is, let's back up to the present moment and let's do step two. Step two is now I want you to close your eyes and I want you to visualize what are all of the tedious, annoying, boring, hard things that you need to do that you're either not doing now or you need to do more of. Start to list them out.
Being more consistent on social media, engaging with other podcasters, just being consistent and practicing patience, getting more creative, and not being scared to invest money.
That's the big one.
Right.
That's the big one. So you just said that you needed to be more patient. You needed to stop being afraid to invest money. You needed to connect with more podcasters. You needed to be on social media more. Now, what you do, now that you have a list of all the things that you need to be doing that you're not doing or you're not doing enough of. And for a lot of people, they don't know. Okay, well, I don't know. I know what I want, but I don't know what the work is. Just find somebody on social media or out in the world who has the thing that you want, study what they did, and write all those things down as an action. But generally, there are videos you can watch, there are events you can go to, there are webinars that you can take, there are books that you can read. The information of what to do is out there. So, how do you use visualization now that you know what you want and you know some of the actions that you need to take that will take you in a path leading toward what you want? Well, now what you do is every single morning, you're going to add to your morning routine writing down 5 things that you want. And one of those things is going to be I want whatever it is that the goal is. In your case, it is I want my podcast to reach tens of thousands of people, right? Then the why, why you want to do that. Why do you want to reach tens of thousands of people, Doug?
because I feel that I have a strong message and I want people to use hard times to grow and make themselves better and not use it as an excuse to make their situation worse.
Okay, now let's make it about you. How do you feel when the stuff that you're putting out impacts people?
I feel amazing because it continues to reinforce that there was purpose in a lot of the pain that I went through when I was younger.
There's your why. You feel fulfilled turning the tremendous pain that you felt into a sense of purpose. And that purpose is acknowledged when you hear from people who listen to your podcast. That's your why. That's the intrinsic source of motivation for you. It's not about them. Anybody who wants to make a difference in the world, the reason why you're motivated to do that is because it feels so good for you. I'm dead serious about this, and there's nothing selfish about it. That's why it feels so good to volunteer. It's why it feels so good to give back because you get something. You get affirmed as a human being that your time, your energy, your pain matters. And that's so important. So now that you feel that feeling inside your body of why you want this thing because it makes you feel like you matter, it makes you come alive, whatever the reason is. Now you're going to close your eyes and you said the hardest thing for you is going to be to invest money in growing this podcast. So I want you to close your eyes and I want you to describe for me an image of how much money and what you're actually investing in. Okay. So describe that scene for me. Put me at the scene.
So I'm investing in production. I'm investing in somebody to help me do some of the tedious tasks that I'm working that I'm like staying up super super late that's can be overwhelming at times because I still do have a training business. I'm investing in travel to network with other podcasters and meet different people at conferences.
Hmm. And
I'm
and as you see the money going out the door, what are you feeling that's negative in your body?
It's uncertainty
Where do you feel it in your body?
in my legs.
You feel it in your legs? Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know why. I think it's because I hold a lot of stress in my hips, but
Well, it's a try that you know what that is, by the way, is that's your nervous system feeling uncertainty. That's where you feel it.
right.
This is how you manifest properly, by the way, right here. You have to visualize in your mind writing the check and feeling the pain in your legs of uncertainty. You have to visualize in your mind sitting in that plane seat, flying to a conference, feeling the pit in your stomach, being worried about whether or not anyone's going to take you seriously because there's all these big podcasters there. You need to feel your chest contract and squeeze in as you walk up to somebody that you deeply admire and you start a conversation, or you walk up to an event organizer and say, I'd like to apply to be on a panel next year. How do I do that? And your chest gets really tight because you feel like you don't belong there because you don't have the numbers yet, or whatever your stupid story is. When you picture that in your mind and you feel the negative sensation in your body, you are doing resistance training. This is how you align your mind, body, and spirit to not resist the hard stuff. Here's a cool fact about your brain doesn't know the difference between you actually spending the money, buying the plane ticket, getting on the plane, and flying to that event, or you imagining it in your mind. And when you run through the hard things that you're avoiding in your mind and you allow yourself to feel the negative sensation in your body, you are training and mentally rehearsing the exact same way Olympic athletes do with the 9 sports psychologists that the US Olympic team has to help our athletes prepare. You are mentally rehearsing before the actual event so that your mind and your body are trained to anticipate and push right on through all the stuff that's scary because you've already rehearsed it. That's how you use manifesting to help you do the work to get what you want.
Wow. I'm so grateful that we kind of brought that up and that you helped walk me through this.
What did you get out of that?
Well, I definitely, one, I became aware of not only what I need to do, but like what's the fear that's attached to it.
What is the fear?
Well, the fear is always going to be uncertainty or scarcity because I think the one thing that's been beneficial to me in my life is that I've always had my back against the wall from being somebody who was a convicted felon in jail, not growing up with a ton of money, that sort of thing, where I've always been forced to just hustle, 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 work, 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 where I'm used to this kind of situation. But on the flip side, the negative is I'm so used to being stressed because I grew up in a stressful environment. I put myself in a stressful environment from selling drugs and doing drugs for a majority of my life when I was younger, so that a lot of times now I've had to become aware of when I'm creating more stress around something that's a good thing instead of something that I would have seen back in the day as something that was bad or whatever.
Can I unpack that?
Sure.
So you just said that you realize that you're used to having your back up against the wall. That having been a kid that grew up in a very chaotic household, who then turned to dealing drugs, who then got arrested and was convicted as a felon and served time behind bars, all of which I'm very familiar with because I used to be a public defender in Manhattan. So I have not served time, but I have represented people accused of crimes and who have committed crimes and who have served time for a large part of my career. And one of the things that I want to point out is that you were attracted to the chaos of selling drugs because it's all you knew as a kid in your home and it felt familiar. And this is why it can be really challenging to break old patterns. And that's because patterns are familiar. And if they're familiar, they just repeat automatically without you even realizing it. And so here you are now. How many years have you been out of jail?
Gosh, so December 26th just marked 13 years.
So 13 years. On December 26th, it was 13 years since you were released from federal prison.
Or no,
Amazing.
county jail, yeah, but
Okay, well, county jail.
yeah, yeah.
It's still a felony conviction,
Yep.
13 years, you're behind bars. You have turned your entire life around, but there is one pattern that still runs your life. And the pattern that runs your life is chaos. That And if you don't identify that chaos and friction and feeling on edge is what you're so familiar with, if you don't identify that now and recognize all the places in your business where you are creating chaos, creating friction, and putting yourself on edge, that pattern will keep you from living into your full potential. And so here's what I would do. I would make a list of every aspect of your daily life or business that creates chaos, that causes friction internally, or leaves you feeling on edge. And then I would do the work this year to put systems, people, process in place so that you create new patterns. I can relate to this so profoundly, not because I've served time behind bars, but because, like so many people, having stored trauma from being molested as a kid, when I was 9 years old, in my nervous system, I have lived my whole life from the age of 9 till about 46 when I first started understanding that this was stored trauma and understanding that my anxiety was largely due to the fact that when that happened to me at the age of 9, my nervous system went from calm and cool and resting to on edge, stressed out, fight or flight. And it probably never flipped off of that. My dominant pattern, Doug, is being busy and being on the run and being on the move, because if I can be 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody else, I'm going to be safe. And so the thing that doesn't work in my life is that my whole business up until very recently was organized around a pattern that's Mel's running to catch a plane. Mel's running to do this. Mel's on the move. And I hated how it felt, but I had no idea how to stop being so busy and stop being on the run, because I equated being on the run with safety and with control. And it's the opposite. You see, these patterns that we develop when we're a kid made us feel safe when we were a kid because they were familiar. But now that they're an adult, they're screwing up our lives. And so I have gone through the same exercise very recently. What are all the things in my business and that I'm doing in my day to day life that I hate? What are the things that cause friction? Where are there, where is this behavior making me miserable? And now I am going to work with removing all the friction, removing all the busyness. And I'm going to tell you first of all, what are you getting out of me sharing this?
Well, I'm very thankful because my audience is going to totally relate to this, and that's kind of why I shared what I shared, because there's so many people that struggle with this very thing, and I was very fortunate that I was in a therapist's office probably, I don't remember, 6 or 7 years ago, and I was stressed, and I had nothing to be stressed about. I was making good money, I was writing books, and my I just written my first book, and my therapist was like, "What was your childhood like?" I was like, "Ah, my parents got divorced." And I just started explaining what happened. She's like, "You grew up in chaos, so you, like you said, your nervous system is gonna seek out more chaos." And then it began to make sense, because she was like, "You have a certain level of homeostasis that your body is used to, and your body is always gonna revert back to that. You have to create a new normal." And I was fortunate that I mean, I'm still aware of it, and I think just through I'm aware of it, and I still make mistakes based on it just because I'm still working through a lot of that. But there's a lot of people that, as you're saying that, they never figure it out because they're like, they just accept the fact they're always gonna be stressed.
You don't have to be. Like, I think the place, if you want to heal, if you want to be happier, the place to really focus all your work on is regulating your nervous system. And there's lots of ways you can do it. You can do it through cold exposure therapy, by climbing into an ice bath and learning how to breathe yourself through the discomfort for 30 seconds to a minute. You can do it through EMDR. You can do it through guided psychedelic therapies, with a licensed therapist, but you're not going to talk yourself out of a nervous system response. You can also put your hands on your heart. This is something I write about in the High Five Habit, and press on your vagus nerve and say, I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved, which will bring you back into your body, and it'll flip the switch between your fight or flight sympathetic nervous system back into the parasympathetic nervous system. And so there are things you can do, but understand that these patterns get triggered at an emotional nervous system level before your brain catches up. And so the reason why, for example, when I asked you, hey, visualize yourself writing a check that's scary, and you said, I feel that in my legs, that's your nervous system. That's where your stored tension, trauma, and stress activates. It can be different for everybody. And so, back to the advice I was giving you, you have to write down all the areas where you are unknowingly creating chaos. And I remember when it was, I remember this person said something to me when I first got involved in the speaking business, and my career started to take off. And he said, Mel, you better say yes to every speech you can get, because speakers on the corporate circuit get hot and then they disappear. and this is a fad. And that triggered that, like, I gotta go, 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 go. And so for 5 years, I said yes to absolutely everything I possibly could because my husband and I were in a horrendous financial situation and we desperately needed the money. And I ran myself into the ground, not because I was being intentional, but because this pattern of being busy kicked into full gear, but it was driven by fear. It was driven by fear. And I believe that as much work as you have done on yourself, turning your whole life around and now serving so many people and making a huge difference in building this business, if you dig deep, what drives the fear of spending the money and investing yourself is a deeper fear.